You're listening to the Catholic Family Podcast, Lent Around the World, daily meditations chosen and read by traditional Catholics from around the globe.
The School of Jesus Crucified, The Lessons of Calvary and Daily Catholic Life, written by Father Ignatius of the Side of Jesus, Passionist. Jesus is led before the Tribunal of Annas. Jesus, being taken and bound by the Jews, is violently dragged from the Garden of Jerusalem to be presented before the Tribunal of Annas, the high priest. Never has any culprit, or even any notorious malefactor, been treated with such barbarous cruelty as is the most innocent Son of God upon this occasion. One man drags him forward, another smites, another insults, another blasphemes, another maltreats his sacred person in diverse ways. And what is the demeanor of Jesus under such an accumulation of outrages and sufferings? Without uttering one word of complaint, without making the slightest demonstration of anger or desire of revenge, he advances like a meek lamb led to the slaughter. Jesus, with one single word, might have struck terror into his enemies, and yet he submits to everything in patient silence. He might in one moment have delivered himself from their fury, and yet willingly subjects himself to it, and regards all their insults and outrages as so many outbursts of the anger of God punishing the sins of the world in his sacred humanity, and he implores mercy for us, offering them all to his eternal Father. Behold our blessed Jesus walking in the midst of this insolent band of soldiers, his head bowed down, his eyes bent on the ground, his hands bound, his face disfigured with blows, his whole frame exhausted and trembling, and with scarcely the strength to proceed further. Can it be possible that a Christian, with such a spectacle before his eyes, should continue to be proud, should give way to anger, should be unable to preserve for a moment's silence under affronts, or be unwilling to bear the slightest injury? Ah, shame, shame upon your own self, for you have truly deserved all the outrages and affronts which are heaped upon your innocent Jesus. As soon as the Jews arrive at Jerusalem, they conduct Jesus to the house of Annas, enter the great hall without delay, and present the Holy of Holies before the high priest as a malefactor. Jesus remains standing, bound like a criminal, before his proud judge, who examines him concerning his disciples and his doctrine. What a sight to behold! The Son of God, the eternal high priest, the universal judge of all mankind, presented before an earthly tribunal to be judged by a sinful, proud, hypocritical man. What must the angels have thought on beholding their Lord in a state of such deep humiliation? But what do you say to so wonderful an example of humility and patience? You who seek applause and the esteem of men, you who cannot endure to see an equal preferred before you, you who so greatly fear the judgments of men, and who, although but a sinner, yet shrink from being thought of as such. Observe your most patient Jesus standing before the tribunal of Annas, and with what serenity of countenance, intrepidity of heart, and modesty of speech, he who is innocence itself submits to be judged by a sinner. Oh, what will be your fate when you shall appear before Jesus Christ, your judge, and be convicted of having so little profited by his example, and of having led a life directly in opposition to his teaching? Consider how painful it must be to Jesus to behold his character defamed, while his disciples utter not a word in his defense. He looks round to see whether there are any of his friends or followers to interest themselves in his behalf, but there is not one man to come forward in his defense. Every day, do not you also inflict this wound anew upon his divine heart, when you remain cold and insensible, and take no pains to defend the honor of God attacked by sinners, or the sanctity of religion blasphemed by the impious? Our most afflicted Redeemer beholds also brought forward a number of false witnesses, who by their accusations conspire to hasten his condemnation. By the slightest bid of his omnipotence, he might have silenced all these wretches, who have been formerly the witnesses of his miracles, or benefited by his loving charity. But Jesus is silent, and endures their execrable ingratitude with indescribable patience. How long has Jesus patiently borne with you, who, after having received so many benefits from his liberal hand, never cease most ungratefully to offend and outrage him? Ah, my sweet Savior, grant through thy great mercy that I may from this moment cease to be ungrateful to thy love. The fruit. God is greatly glorified when we humbly accept those mortifications and humiliations which daily fall to our lot. Reflect on what may happen to you in particular, and resolve that such shall be your conduct. Fear not the judgments of men, and far less allow yourself to be persuaded to neglect virtuous acts and works of piety for fear of what the world will say. Love to be considered imperfect, and to appear a sinner before men, but strive with all the energy of your soul not to be such before God. Example. The remembrance of the sufferings of Jesus inspires a man with long-enduring patience under injuries. It once happened that St. Paul of the Cross was making a voyage in the same ship with some individuals who, forgetting the sanctity of their character, seasoned their discourse rather freely with indecent expressions. The good Father mildly reproved them, and sought in the most charitable manner to bring them to a sense of their fault. But they, burning with anger against their benefactor, overwhelmed him with such a torrent of abuse and scornful words as to horrify all who listened to them. The humble servant of God, calling to mind the outrages offered to Jesus in his passion, remained perfectly silent, without being in the slightest degree discomposed, and with the most serene and peaceful expression of countenance. Are you desirous of gaining a similar victory over yourself? Adopt the same means.